Welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. My name is Josh. I am super excited about this interview with Tim Soar, founder of Soar Running. I'm glad you're here with me today. All right, I've been touring around England, interviewing people I've been excited about, I've known, but I've never seen in real life. Tommy Lewis, we did a Wilder event at Hampstead Heath in London, and then a podcast together. Hung out with Inky Steve, went on a run through Manchester, learned about the history of all that, really what I think is the foundation of punk rock. It's where the Industrial Revolution started, and it's where Inky Steve has lived for 42 years and has been giving haircuts there for 20 years, and I got one from him, and we talked running and running shoes. And hanging out in the Cotswolds, getting to know this country even better, and then going back to London to hang with Mike Kratzer for another Wilder release event at the London Marathon. But I also got this really interesting interview in with Tim Soar of Soar Running, S-O-A-R, Soar Running. Go to soarrunning.com. I thoroughly loved it. I think this was a pretty ethereal, high concept discussion, which was very enjoyable for me. We're talking art, creativity, inspiration. The Soar gear is quite technical. It is advanced. It is a higher price point. But what we talked about was maybe a little bit of that, but by and large, just what drives that and what drove Tim in starting the company, the serendipity that occurred through the course of the starting of it, and where it's at now and where it's headed. I'm not doing justice in this intro. I just ask that you buckle up and enjoy this interview. It's different than most of the others. And I'm just beyond thankful that I got to hang with Tim in the Soar headquarters there in London, and I hope to do it again sometime. Enjoy.
I think that you specifically as, starter of the brand are among the most mysterious and interesting people right now to me in running, because you and I just started doing this thing called High Tones with my friend Sam Losi, and the idea is that there's a lot of brands out there who have expensive price points that are selling on performance making claims of performance, and starting to dig into that and test that. But one of the reason that we started with Soar is because it seems like, from my perspective, that you are the epitome of the brand that is performance and style. And so I guess I want to understand that's where I want to land. How did Soar become performance and style? And I think because you're such an unknown character in the business to me right now, I'd love to know how you got to Soar. How did you get to opening a brand that was focused on fashion in the world of running? Because when you did it, not many people, if anybody, were doing it. So let's start with, the months leading up to deciding to start Soar. Where were you coming from? What were you doing?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, thank you. That's very flattering to say. I'm the mystery man of running at the moment.
Yeah, you are. Okay, making sure you're recording. Okay, go ahead.
So I came to and I've told my kind of story, my journey to Soar quite a few times. Mm-hmm. And when you tell your narrative about how you got somewhere and the skill set you brought to it, it's very easy to kind of weave a mythology that you start believing yourself. So I came to Soar from a point of massive failure, which was I'd had a menswear and latterly women's wear label in London, high fashion.
Okay.
I was a BFC designer, British Fashion Council designer, doing big catwalk shows in London. I won a thing called the New Gen Award, which is the award for all the hottest up-and-coming designers, and I won that at the age in my mid-50s. Everyone else was in their early 20s in that competition. So, and I thought fashion was the thing I really wanted to do. It really, that was something that really had got its hook into me.
Yeah.
And it failed because it's a crappy business model, and all independent fashion designers fail in the UK, essentially. So I came out of that, and it was a really bad year. My dad died that year. The fashion business failed. I came at that in a really bad place, just thinking I was unemployable.
What year was that?
That was in 2015.
Okay.
So yeah, I came out thinking I was unemployable, essentially, going, what the hell am I going to do now?
Yeah.
But during and a little bit prior to the fashion business, I've been DJing a lot. I DJed into the fashion business as well. And part of coming out of that process made me realize I had to get fit because it was a very unhealthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I started cycling very seriously. Then I moved into running. And so, and I think that was at the time when this kind of fitness culture was a nascent thing. It was first starting.
Yeah.
So I got into cycling, I got into running, and, I'd had in DJing, I loved the high of DJing in both a good way and a bad way, and all that entails.
Yeah.
And then suddenly from cycling and running, I realized you could get this other high from doing this, the high you get from physical activity.
Wow.
And also engaging with your body. Everything had been in my head. I've been a designer, like all the stuff I'd done was in my head. I hadn't really engaged with my body. So suddenly engaging with my body and getting this amazing high that you get from after you did a bike ride or do a run.
Yes.
That was like, aha, okay, this is super interesting. So I had been running. The fashion design business had failed, and I didn't understand why it had failed. And at the time, I thought the reason it failed was because I'd done something wrong, and it wasn't. It was just the business model was really crappy. So I came out of there creatively insecure, massive failure, and my dad died, like in a really not a great place.
Yeah.
But I was running, and that was great, and I loved it, and I started to understand that world. And I had a sort of a very fortunate conversation with my cousin who's a financier in the city at a family party. And this was the time Rafa had launched, and the idea of a boutique running, premium running apparel proposition was in the air, if you like.
Yes.
And so we were just kind of spitballing a bit and said, well, why don't we do something in running? And I was kind of going, oh yeah, okay, this is going to be my way back in. Yeah. This is going to be the thing that lets me get back into this world. So it was an amazing bit of serendipity, and if that conversation hadn't happened, God knows what I'd be doing. I'd be kind of sweeping the streets or something.
Right. Yeah.
So, but what it meant I came to Soar running with a high degree of expertise that I got from fashion and also from being a designer for a long time in different disciplines of design. Yeah. So I knew what I was doing. I knew how to produce product. I was picky about what I wanted to do, and it was financed. And that was a key thing coming into the business. It was a finance business start. It wasn't self-financed.
Very different.
Which brings it's different, and it brings a discipline to the way you approach the business. Yeah. And when I first launched it, I thought it was going to be like a running Rafa. I thought that's what the model was for kind of premium sportswear. Yeah. And it was totally not that. But that's what I thought it was going to be.
How would you characterize that? I just want to make sure we're on the same page, because I was a fan of Rafa, though I've never been a cyclist. I just love the brand. Yeah. The reason that it's Borderlands.cc is because Rafa.cc. They did a great job with all that, but so to bring everyone up to speed, how would you characterize what Rafa did?
So I would characterize Rafa as a heritage-inspired modern brand. And what
heritage-inspired modern brand. That's good.
And what that means is their reference points were, Jacques Anquetil cycling up Mont Ventoux in the 1950s. That was where they harked back to this kind of golden age of cycling, and they tried to bring that aesthetic into the modern world. And they did it very well. I think initially their marketing proposition was super good. So heritage inspired, and I would say, no disrespect to Tracksmith, but that's what the Tracksmith proposition is, this slightly heritage-inspired modern take on sports.
Yeah, all their branding, all their visuals are like hearkening to early Boston Marathon.
Correct, yeah. So that's what I thought it was going to be, this modern take on sort of heritage, if you like. Yeah. And there was something in the air about that generally at the time. As I started doing it, and as I started doing the R&D for the brand, I was, and again, coming from a fashion design background and a menswear design background, where you spend a lot of time thinking about how things fit, how garments fit, how they feel when you wear them. That's super important. Garments have to feel good when you wear them. Yeah. And I came into this and I was product testing other brands' product, and I was gobsmacked that it was so shit. Yeah. That it was so poor. Yeah. And I thought whoever designed this product designed in inverted commas, has not done product development and they haven't run in it. Because if they'd run in it, it wouldn't be like this. So that was like a real penny drop moment, which was, okay, how you have to do this, how you have to develop products in running apparel, in any sportswear, is you have to be there from the start of the process to the very end of the process as the designer in all aspects of it. And you have to run in it. You have to run it when you're tired, and you have to run it when you're feeling really crappy, or when you're feeling great, or when it's cold, or when it's hot. And you have to experience that as an athlete as well as a designer. And if you do that, you have good products coming out of it.
Interesting.
And that is, at first I thought, as I said, you tell your story often enough to have this kind of to build your own legend.
Yeah.
And I initially characterized that as being something hard and it's difficult to do, but I don't think it is. It's once you have the mindset, it's very simple to do.
Yeah.
You have to understand what you want, and you have to understand the characteristics of material and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But when you understand that the way you get good products is by developing in them, treating it like product design, changing it a bit, prototyping, running in it, prototyping, that process is simple, but it requires commitment.
Yes.
It's like training.
Yeah.
It's like training. You don't get quick wins in training.
Right.
But trust in the process and you get good results out of it.
Yeah.
So it's quite analogous to that. So very quickly, this mindset, I understood, to get really good products, you have to develop them from start to scratch, and you have to treat it like product design. You're not designing a pair of shorts, you're designing a product that is a pair of shorts that allows you to run.
Oh, I mean,
it.
okay. So that's a branding discussion to some degree, as much as it is a product discussion, because you're saying, what do you want that whoever buys your shorts, what do you want them to feel
exactly
when they're wearing them?
What's it to doing? What do they want to fit? How should it feel?
Yes.
And what's part of your kind of running life are they there to address? Is it a training short? Is it a racing short? Is it a trail short?
Yeah.
So you have to understand those parameters. But when I say it's like product design, it's most big brands, when they say design, they talk about drawing a picture on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. It's a flat, and I'll send it to a factory, and then I'll do the pattern cutting, all of that.
Right.
Product design is prototyping and iterating. So you make a prototype, you change that prototype, you test it, you change the prototype again, and so you have this process of iteration.
Yeah.
So it means that the design part isn't the picture you draw of the product. The design part is this process of prototyping, changing, changing. And you get very good products when you do that.
Yeah, even just hearing you think about that, like I've never been in apparel where I'm, cut and sew, or I don't even know the wording for it, where I'm actually designing something. But I bought shirts and put screen prints on them as a punk rock kid.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, the way that you're talking about it is the way that I see people talk about, tech product. I've never heard anyone talk about an apparel where you're iterating. It's like, okay, I'm going to create this thing. I'm going to show it to you. And you're my key user. You're the person I hope would enjoy it. And you're like, I don't like that. This felt kind of weird. And then you get 20 people and you start to look for, okay, what are my users saying? And then the product starts to morph around what you're hearing from them. So tech, that makes sense because you go right to the code. Your tech person can make some changes, and 5 minutes later you can show it. So for you, if let's say it's a short, you run short that I try, and you're product testing, and you get my feedback, you get 20 people's feedback. Are you then taking that in and making a change to it?
Don't get feedback.
Don't do feedback.
Don't ask people what they want.
Okay.
That's the other really crucial thing. Don't. So
just because someone's interested in it doesn't mean it's in their interest.
Correct. And also, there's a famous Henry Ford quote when he designed the Model T Ford, and he said, which is, if you'd asked farmers what they want, they'd have said faster horses.
That's right.
So, and I've had that many times with products where you'd speak to athletes or runners, serious runners, and you say, what about this product? And they go, well, no, it shouldn't be like that. It should be like this, because that's what they're used to. So absolutely, we don't. It's only very recently we started testing outside anyone in this business.
Okay.
So we've got a team of 3 people, and I understand intimately how garments work on the body. And I'm not the fastest runner, but I run fast enough to understand whether something's working or not.
Yeah.
So Now that will change. That has to change as we're going forward and growing. But you have to take a view, and you have to trust your own.
Yes.
And maybe that's a difficult bit, perhaps.
Yes.
That you really have to trust your viewpoint a lot, which I do. I've done it.
Well, okay, so now I think this is what's pushing. I think we're just arriving very honestly at why Soar has the image that it has, is because now you're, rather than building the thing, getting the feedback, which is a way, you're saying, "Oh, I've got vision for this stuff," and you're out front. So you put it in terms of, if you go to the Picasso Museum right now in Paris, you look at it, and a lot of people say, a kid could draw that. Well, you got to look at Picasso's early stuff.
Yeah.
He was a realist. He could paint with incredible expertise.
Rose period, blue period, amazing.
Beautiful. And so by the time you see some of this crazy stuff, that weird stuff that you think, yeah, maybe a kid could technically draw those lines. But what got him there was all of the, let's say, the rules, like knowing, like, and now to bring it back in your terms, here's how a garment would work. Here's how, if they're sprinting, it's going to move this way on them. And then you do your own thing. You're going somewhere in the way that a great artist was going somewhere. So you're approaching it, in my mind, I'm hearing, okay, I've got vision, but there's creativity and artistry to it, where someone might say, I don't like that for this reason. And you say, maybe you're not a great customer, or not a great customer, but maybe this isn't for you. Or the other one is just like, hey, just hold on, I'm going somewhere with this, stay with me. Am I circling a little bit?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. Or have an open mind, because just because of the way things have been done in the past doesn't mean they were done in the right way.
That's right.
So otherwise there's no innovation. So the only way you innovate is by doing things differently.
Yeah.
And so from that point of view, you do have to be an auteur. So you do have to take your view and say, this is how I think we're going to move these things forwards. Yeah. Now, so far, touch wood, we've had very few products where we put them out into the world, to sell them, and people have gone, yeah, this really isn't working at all.
Yeah.
There's been a few things, but they were manufacturing issues rather than kind of design issues. So I think you have to have this mindset where you're treating products as a product and not a drawing on a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. So as I said, you have this process of prototyping and iterating. Mm-hmm. You have a mindset which is, just because things have been done a certain way before doesn't mean it's the best way to do things. Yeah. It might be, but maybe it definitely isn't. Definitely not be. And then you have to be interested in what's next. So the difference between Soar and Rafa is, Rafa had this kind of rear view mirror looking at the past. How can we take this Jacques Anquetil riding up Mont Ventoux and make it something for the present?
Yep.
I'm looking to the future. I want to know what's next. What's the next thing we can do? What's the next thing we can do? What's the most, cutting edge piece of current technology we can incorporate in a way that's valid and works?
I'm going to say some design houses, because this is where I feel like we're headed. I feel like you're, in my limited understanding of high fashion and design houses, the hits like Louis Vuitton or something like that. You're projecting to the future. You see someone like me. I'm not an early adopter. I don't grasp to the newest thing quickly. It takes me a minute. I'm slow, to get to it. But to put it in high fashion terms, you might see something out there and be like, I've never seen anything like that before. I don't know if I like it. I don't. As not an early adopter, I might be like, oh, I don't like that at all. That's never going to take. 4 years later, I'm like, I love it.
Yeah.
And
that was obvious, wasn't it? Yeah.
And there's this. Have you seen The Devil Wears Prada?
Yes. Okay. Of course I have. Yes. Fashion designer. Yeah. Of course I have.
There's a scene in it that is so me. And I'm not going to say that in a good way, but is it Meryl Streep talking to the young designer, the intern?
Yes.
And she said, Meryl Streep is wanting to pick out like some blue shirt, and she's like, and she goes through all the different names for blue without saying just blue. And the intern's like, well, that's just blue. And she's like, you think that's just blue? Actually, that started by this design house, and it worked its way down 8 iterations from the fashion, the greatest of fashion, all the way down to you, and you bought it at Target for $8.99. That blue was set in motion 10 years ago by this great designer who had vision for a new blue. Okay, so this is my way of getting back to you of saying, you're not looking back like Rafa, you're looking forward, right? I mean, am I still circling?
Absolutely, yes.
And I think this is what's pushing you into rarefied air. You're thinking like and I don't know the exact term, but you're thinking like a design house.
Yeah.
True?
Yes. So absolutely. And and we talked about this a little bit on email, and this idea is really starting to crystallize for me. So currently, as your listeners may or may not know, the world of luxury fashion as a kind of industry category sector is really struggling at the moment. And when I say luxury fashion, it is your Louis Vuittons, your Gucci's, etc.
Yeah.
And there's a number of reasons for that. And one is I think they went down like a streetwear rabbit hole when suddenly you're competing against brands which are, streetwear brands which are selling stuff relatively cheaply, and you're trying to play in that world in a different way. But most importantly, I think they forgot about craft and skill and all of that stuff that luxury fashion should be about. Luxury fashion should be highly crafted, difficult to do, highly skilled manufacturing, amazing fabrics, and that's what makes it a luxury.
Yes.
Now, for me, getting true performance out of running apparel is analogous to that. It has all of those things. It takes time. It's difficult. You've got to apply a mindset to it. It requires very expensive technical fabrics. So there is something for me about there's quite a close analogy between what luxury fashion ought to be and what pure performance is in sportswear. It's a category of luxury. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
And if you do it well, your customers know and experience it and feel it. Now, that's not to say that your general running t-shirt has to be a luxury product in inverted commas, but your race day kit or your, whatever, or your wet weather gear, I think it's important for our customers to know that we treat them like that.
Yeah.
That we put a shed load of effort into it and we really think about it and we really develop it in a way that's considered and has a process to it.
Yeah.
And we try and manufacture it the best way we can.
Yeah.
So, and that's running is hard. Anything that makes it a bit easier and a bit nicer is great.
Yeah.
And, I put a lot of my life in running. I have compromises with my family. I don't see my daughter as much. Do you know what I mean? Which every runner has. Every runner. But that's a big investment emotionally and time-wise, and therefore having products which honor that commitment seems to me a no-brainer.
Yeah. I love that. I've heard a distinction between luxury. There's a distinction between luxury and ultra premium in that luxury becomes this point that the thing that is most valuable maybe to the person who's buying luxury is that it has no performance, that it's just this flex of this has no use other than showing you that I can afford Gucci.
Yes.
Whereas
that's why the industry, that category is screwed because of that, for exactly that reason.
So I think what I love about so with Soar, you're saying, and I don't know I'd love to know what word you actually prefer, but I think ultra premium in that it's more pricey than things out there, but it's because of it's still a value. There's still value. You're getting immense value, just like you just talked about.
Exactly,
you're getting immense value. It's premium. It's got features that are worth the price, but those features make it cost more for you. Therefore, it practically costs more for the end user. So do you like ultra premium? How do you think about it?
So I don't. I mean, it is. Those sort of categories, if you like, they all relate to price to some degree. So where's it as a price point? So is a luxury cup of coffee one that costs $7 versus one that costs $2? Well, if price point, maybe it is. I don't know.
Maybe.
What I think about so why I refer to luxury is what luxury fashion ought to be, which is what it's not, is about process and about craft and about skill. And that's a bit different from premium. Premium is a kind of pricing proposition, if you like.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is Soar products are expensive, but the reason they are expensive is because of this process that we go through to develop them. And by the way, there's lots of cheap running products out there that are pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you have to run in you have to run in Soar apparel. But what I'm saying is, if you want to run in apparel which has gone through this process, this is the price proposition for it. And our margin on our product is 100%, it's less than Nike's margin, for instance, because they're making price dirt cheap in some crappy factory in wherever. Yeah. So it's not that we're screwing people on margin. It's just this process is inherently expensive.
It's an expensive process.
And the manufacturing is inherently expensive.
Yeah. I mean, I think, okay, here's where I resonate with you. When I think about building Borderlands, the last thing I was ever going to do was look at another running company to build my running company.
Yeah.
I think that's the fastest way to build something irrelevant.
Yeah.
You saw Rafa. Rafa inspired a lot of people in a certain way. And so you looked at Rafa, a cycling company, and said, I'm inspired by the way that they're looking backward. And you took that as an artist, internalized it, and said, here's what I'm going to do with that. I'm going to look forward. The way Rafa looked backward, I'm going to look forward. So you're in your own space. So I am just curious, is when that key moment for you of thinking of starting Soar, what other things were just in the world that were making you want to do Soar?
Well, as I said, desperate to get back into. So for whatever reason, I've always loved clothes, fashion, whatever. I've just always loved clothes, and I always loved the way, as in clothes, the way clothes you wear, they allow you to reinvent yourselves. You can look this way one day, this way another day. Yeah. It gives you this kind of shell, if you like. And that's really always intrigued me. But I've always loved clothes as objects in themselves. So when I was doing my fashion label, if I saw a really nice woman's dress, I'd buy it because it's an inherently nice object. Now, that wouldn't necessarily directly relate to menswear.
Right.
But there was something, so I love clothes as objects, if you like. And so for Soar, and also by the other thing when I was doing my fashion, I always wanted to incorporate sportswear into it, but I could never find the right factories to do it because I had high minimums. And when Soar started, there was this world of beautiful, amazing technical performance fabrics and amazing manufacturing. What you can do with manufacturing these days is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so that, the sort of tactileness of the object in itself, the apparel object in itself, that I really liked from Soar. And the more technical it became and the more we started treating products like product design, not fashion design, the more that kind of tactile nature of the product came out. And I love that.
Yeah.
I just love the kind of hand feel of a product, and that's really important as well. And we've been talking about this, about shoe design, your relationship with a garment, how you feel about it starts as soon as you put that garment on, even if it's sportswear.
Yeah.
So as soon as you put something on, if it feels good when you put it on, then automatically that is a positive relationship, if you like.
Yeah.
So the tactile nature of garments and how they fit, that as soon as that started to kick in Soar, then I was really hooked with it. Yeah.
Okay, so I've been in a place as an entrepreneur where I've had things that have failed and I've thought nothing's ever going to work again. I've had those exact moments. I resonate also with you, like that my dad passed recently, and it was while I was working on this app that we just released, and the very last text we ever had before he went into the surgery and never came out of it was him encouraging me about this app. So it was a very special thing for me. So how do you, in that moment when as an artist and a creator, so much of who you are, you're not just an entrepreneur who's looking for a problem that you have no emotional connection to. You have emotional connection. It's tied into things as it relates to your personal life. And so you're trying again and you do Soar. Was there a moment with Soar where you thought, oh, I'm onto something? You don't always get that luxury as an entrepreneur. Was there a moment where you were like, I'm doing it, like this is working?
Yes, and that's only been quite recently.
Yeah,
that's only been quite recently. So I think there was a high, there's been a pretty high degree of uncertainty until COVID. It was really COVID really kick-started it.
Yeah.
And sort of going back before COVID, the product was, Soar products have always been advanced, or not always, historically Soar product was in advance of marketing. So we had a really good product pre-COVID, but we didn't understand how to market it properly.
Okay.
We didn't understand how to get it out in the world and to get it in front of people, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And that absolutely, we do understand how to do that now. But pre-COVID, we had this great product and really not a huge turnover. And so then you're always cash flow constrained. You've got to, worry about paying wages, all of that stuff. Are you going to make it to the end of the year with having enough cash? So it's only really within the last, since COVID, where it's like, okay, this is a thing. And it's only, I would say, within the last 2 years where it's like, this is the thing, and this could be a really serious thing.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing to feel.
Yeah.
And it's, and that's not just me, that's a result of a lot of other people involved in the business and investors in the business and all of that stuff.
So would that mean 7 or 8 years before you felt that? Where are we at?
Yeah, so COVID was 19, so about 5 years before really feeling like, okay, this is secure. But also I came from having a massive car crash with the fashion business, failing. So and as I said, I didn't understand why it failed at first. So I was constantly looking for signs. Is this going to go the same way? Is this going to go the same way? Is this going to go And it did. So thank goodness it didn't. But as a broader point, which I'm sure you all can concur, every time you fail at something, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
And you have to fail. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
That's right.
So failure is really important, and I've only understood that in the last 4 or 5 years.
This is my relationship with the 100-mile distance. Is I've tried 10 times, I've only succeeded twice, and that's why I do it.
Yeah.
If I knew with certainty that I would finish it every time I started, I would try to go further. I wish I finished more than 20% of the time. Don't get me wrong, but it's that uncertainty that makes me want to dig in. I want to do something bigger than myself.
Yeah.
And so if and no shade on the 5K, 10K, up to 50K, 50 miler, like I know that if I start those, I'm going to finish. I'm not going to have a great time. I just know that if I start, I'm highly likely to finish. That's really not compelling to me.
Yeah.
I need it has to have a high likelihood of failure for me to get like really excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not risking failure, you're not trying hard enough, basically.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that can go, and relating that to running, that could go for distance, that could go for speed, that could go for a number of different things.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, there's many running analogies that you can pull to your business, and it's true. They're true analogies. That you've got to trust the process. You don't get quick results, but you get results if you're consistent. All of that stuff's definitely true. And I've had. So, you talked about the fact that, you have to be emotionally involved in the business, you have to be emotionally involved in the project if you really want to push things forward.
Yeah.
And I've had nearly 2 years of relentless injuries because of my age. And if it wasn't for this business, I'd have stopped running because it would just been it's just been such a trudge to get back to fitness. But actually, what this business has given me, what it's given back to my running, is I am running again, and I'm almost fully fit again, and I wouldn't have had that if it wasn't a business. So it's kind of a two-way street as well, which has been really interesting.
Yeah. Okay, that kind of answers my next question, but I'm curious how you think about it. Is serendipity, like you start something, you're ambitious, you're kind of playing around in uncharted territory. What has been the serendipity that you've encountered along the way that you thought, when you started this, maybe there was a moment where it caught someone's attention that you were like, oh, I really respect that person and they like what I'm creating, or it's that it gave you the gift of running. If you hadn't started this company, you might not be running still. So
firstly, as I said, the conversation with my cousin, that was the most profound serendipitous moment, if you like, which really couldn't have happened. Very easily might not have happened.
Right.
And the second one, so our best-selling product is our race vest. It's very light. It's cut differently to most race vests.
Yeah.
It performs really well. And this goes back to the fact that you have to run in your products to understand what they are and what they can be. And I was in Mallorca, high summer, and because it was my family, the only time I could run was just before lunch. Hottest part of the day. It was about 32, 33 degrees. And I had a prototype of an early race vest that was a size too small because we only had a small sample.
Yeah.
So I put it on, went running, got about 15 minutes into run. And as you know, you zone out and you run. And you thought, I forgot. And I thought, I forgot to put a top on. Oh, this feels quite nice. And then I came back into the moment. I thought, I'm wearing this vest. Why does it feel like I'm not wearing anything? And the fact that it was a size too small and it had become really tight on the body meant the fabric reacted totally differently. And that was like a moment going, yeah, of course, this vest needs to be much tighter. It needs to be cut much tighter. It's going to be more comfortable. You're going to get a very small aero advantage, which is important at some speeds. And so that moment flipped my understanding of that garment, and that garment's become our best-selling garment around the world.
That's amazing.
Because of that reason.
Yes, the serendipity of that.
Yeah.
Okay, and just for the American audience, a vest, American singlet.
Yes,
that's
a
what
race singlet.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm looking for. It's like, it's that sort of stuff where, in the world of entrepreneurship and you're looking at another company, it's like you can't teach that.
Yeah.
Other than to say, use your products.
Yes. Use your products.
That's all you can say, but you can't say what the output's going to be other than you open yourself to the serendipity. If you just use your stuff, you open yourself up to those aha moments that can all of a sudden be the thing that makes everything come together for you on a certain item.
First rule of business done there. Great.
Yeah. Oh man. So, do you have any year one garments like that's still in your possession?
So yeah, the other sort of part of expense, if you like, or premium pricing, or high pricing is we have a list of kind of a hierarchy of actions, or not actions, but things the product has to do. And like number one is performance.
Yeah.
So if you can't do anything to impact performance, and number two is it's got to look beautiful. So it has to have an aesthetic.
Yeah.
That's important. It's important how things look. And then
why? I want to hear your take on why is it as a runner important how things look? Because I think that's where this gets lost for the average dirtbag runner of like, I don't care how I look. What's your case for it being important?
So for me, once you have a garment, there's a number of small changes you can make to the way it looks, or quite large changes with some garments. But there's a number of changes. So you can have a view as to, once the garment's functional, you can then have a view as how it looks, as opposed to the traditional design process where you design how it looks and then try to make it work. So this is, we have a garment and we get it working and then we try to think how it looks. So why is that interesting, or why is that good?
Important,
so I think it's good for two reasons, because it's important that Soar garments have a sort of family characteristics, if you like. So if you're buying a Soar garment, it looks a certain way. If you buy other Soar garments, they kind of work together.
Yes.
And that's important. It's important also for other people to see it, so they understand it has a kind of Soar handwriting. And that's important for me because I'm a visual person.
Yeah.
And as we talked about before, you have to take a view about your brand, and I'm a visual person, so it's really important to me that things look good and they have a distinctive identity.
Yes.
But it's also important, we're a forward-looking brand, and I want our products to have a forward-looking aesthetic. So
yeah.
Is that important to all runners? Sure, it's not, but the performance is. So you get the performance, but then you get this other stuff for free added on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
After that's durability. So things have to be durable. So you can't, a race vest can't be super durable because it's very lightweight. So inherently, if you wanted to make it very durable, you could make it really thick and heavy. Yeah. It wouldn't work so well.
Yeah.
So you can't compromise performance for durability. But after performance and after things looking good, things have to be as durable as they possibly can.
Right.
Because they're expensive. You want them to last.
That's right.
So this is a very long way of saying, yes, I have got garments from very first production still. Yeah. They were still from the Rafa-inspired mindset where I was thinking about what's a kind of modern version of heritage running looks like, and before I really understood about how to develop performance products. So from how do they compare now? Well, it's like, I'll bring them out when I do the exhibition in 20 years time.
That'd be fun. I think it'd be fun to see.
Yeah. But they're still okay.
Yeah.
But they're nothing compared to what we do now.
Yeah.
So but they're still in one piece.
Yes, right. Which is great.
Which is great. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned sort of design language, and here's how I think about this. As a former musician and you being DJ, I think about you get a certain album, and by a great artist,
Such as
what's that?
Can we have some references here? Such as
Let's say Willie Nelson.
Yep,
Let's
nice.
throw Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
My dad's best friend has played harmonica with Willie
Really?
since 1972. Mickey.
Brilliant.
So a certain album, you can hear a certain album and it sounds a certain way. You just take U2 for example as well. Like you hear something, the album it comes from, and that's harder than it sounds to make a whole album sound like one album. And we're somewhat lost on that because now it's the song is the hero instead of the album. But to take
it's the snippet, the song,
the song, yes.
Yeah.
So to take 12 unique songs and make them sound like they belong together is hard. And so you look for certain ways to do that. Is there a certain instrument that'll tie it together? Are you going to use an organ in some way on every song? Is Mickey playing harmonica in a certain way? Like you got to make it feel like an album. One of the things that I can't put my finger on with Soar is up in your showroom where it's just up there. It's like this stuff all feels like it goes together. It feels like it's on the same album. What are you trying to, when a garment goes out from a design standpoint, what are some of the things that you want, help me put words to that. Why does this thing on this rack over here somehow feel like this thing on this rack over here, even though they're different colors? These are shorts, this is a top, how do you think about that?
Yeah, so it's hard to pinpoint any one thing because it's a number of different things and it sort of starts with the fabric. So the categories of fabrics that we use are, sometimes they're woven fabrics, sometimes they're knitted fabrics. But the way we pick fabrics inherently means that they have a visual relationship as well as a performance relationship. They're picked purely for performance, but
they hang off the hanger
together.
when they on the hanger. The way that they hang, feels similar.
Feels similar.
Yes.
And then there's branding. There's on-garment branding, so that's very coherent. I mean, it's a classic thing. Obviously, you brand stuff coherently, and also I think we have, and this is I'd love to take credit for this, but I'm not going to because this is a result of Alex, who works with me on the design business. We have this very distinctive print language now, which is particularly manifested in our vests, but also some of our shorts, some of our racing products.
Yeah.
So it's very distinctive print language, very bright, colorful print language, which is designed to be coherent and designed to always, one of the latest prints will work with one of the oldest prints, if you like. So they're designed to always have this relationship together. So we're not saying tear up your wardrobe, start again each season. That the fashion way. We're saying, we know you're adding things slowly. This is still going to work with that.
Yes.
So I think it's a mindset, and I also think inherently it's a bit, you were saying about an album, which is a good analogy. The producer is always the same.
That's right.
In this case. So the design department, the producer in inverted commas, is always the same. So you have this similar characteristic. And similar approach to
your touch
things.
On it. Anytime you touch something, it has a certain expression. You express it in a certain way, so that feels that's cohesive.
Yeah.
But then as you scale, it sounds like you've got Alex, you've got other people. Like as you're scaling that, you're still involved, but there's something about, and I don't know about this in the fashion world where you live, like, is it always about the hand of the artist, or is there a way to grow it beyond? Like, could your team now create a Soar garment without you being near it?
So I was always an iconoclast. I was always by myself doing stuff historically. Even when I was doing fashion design, I was doing with a very small team. And what you have to do if you want to grow a business is you have to be able to scale your creative vision and your creative team.
It's hard.
So it's hard, but when you find the right people, it's like, oh my God, I've got 6 hands rather than 2 hands. And I've got 3 brains. And so when you find the right people, those people, they'll come into the business with skill sets that are different to mine. So they bring part of their DNA in there. And when you get that right, you have an amazing, powerful machine. And if you can't do that, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be a limit to how much you can do yourself.
Right.
So that's about learning to trust, and that's a whole nother conversation about emotional vulnerability and trust that you have to have in your business to grow it as well. And definitely, your design process, that's a very key part of who I am, who I see myself as. So opening that up, having the trust and the vulnerability to open that up is really important.
Yeah.
It can be hard, but once you do it, it's very beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of that as like songwriting. Sometimes that's a very personal experience.
Absolutely.
But if you want to write a hit, the joke is you'll see certain songs. Now there was one hit in the last year that had 20 songwriters on it.
Yeah.
Now that's absurd. But the reality of you make a better song sometimes when you bring in, you got 2 or 3 people in the room, and for me who works alone, creatively works alone, it's very hard for me to write with someone else, to do anything. I just love to, I'm just most happy in my own head.
Yes.
That doesn't produce the best work always.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does. Or at least it produces the best work to a point, but then we're back to scale. I can't scale, beyond myself if that's the only way that it works. So with me, I've got, Brian Peterson, Wolf Runner, who's, doing a great job with his stuff. And it's been hard for me to let some of that go, be like, hey, you're your own voice, you're on my platform, but you can say whatever you want. Losing control is hard, I guess.
Yes.
Is what I'm trying to say.
It really is. It really is. And it took me until starting Soar to understand how to be able to do that. And in fact, even later than that, it took someone to give me a management book that I would never have read.
What was it?
It's called the 7 Dysfunctions of the Team, the 5 Dysfunctions of the Team.
Tim,
you know it?
He's from West Texas. Where I'm from.
Okay,
Yeah.
There you go. And that's all about emotional vulnerability.
Great book.
It's all about making yourself vulnerable in the team environment, and being open about your insecurities around what you're doing, and for other people to be open about them. And then when you do that, you can come together in that beautiful group hug, and everything's going to be.
Yeah.
But without that book, I didn't. So when I was doing my fashion business, I always used to get angry with the people I was working with because they were doing the thing that I thought I should be doing, which is, that's like a really crappy way to run a business. Being angry with your team people because they're helping you out.
Right.
So learning that was super important. I also watched, when I was younger, I was still am a big Led Zeppelin fan. And there's Becoming Led Zeppelin. I don't know if you've seen that film.
I don't think I have. Sounds familiar.
Is just come out, which is about
then no, I haven't.
Led Zeppelin from Yardbirds days to second album.
Gosh.
And Robert Plant was talking about songwriting, and he'd never done any songwriting, and that understanding how to become vulnerable with Jimmy Page to be able to put ideas out, that bonding process and letting himself become vulnerable, which then let him become a songwriter. And it's really true. You have to, if you're letting other people in, you're inherently making yourself a bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You have to do that. It's important to do it.
So brief aside, with Led Zeppelin, they were the Yardbirds before. Was it Eric Clapton a part of the Yardbirds?
He was, and then Jimmy Page took over. Jeff Beck took over from Eric Clapton, and then Jimmy Page took over.
What a crazy, iconic.
Yeah, amazing.
The Yardbirds pushed out that many.
Yeah, amazing.
And then to go on to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And was Cream before or after?
After.
Cream was after. So everything emerged from the Yardbirds.
The Yardbirds, yeah. Amazing. Kind of undersung British band.
Iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, okay, so as we get close to landing the plane here, a fun story that my friend Mickey, who played harmonica with Willie Nelson, was playing with Eric Clapton once, and you're playing and playing the harmonica, and he was younger, and you're playing a lot of notes. When you're a musician and you're really good, you tend to play a lot of notes. You're loud and you can play forever. Listen, you go listen to a young, great guitar player compared to an old, great guitar player. And when you're young, you give everything. You give 100%. And he was doing this with Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton was like, hey, I want you to take up smoking cigarettes so that you'll stop blowing into your harmonica all the time. So, this was a bit like, hey, you're great. Shut up sometimes and let me be the guitar player that I am. The point being is I think that, you had mentioned age at one point, and to say like, when you were a young designer, you designed a certain way. So as we sort of land the plane now, as you've had time designing in so many different industries and worlds, and you're in running now. Like, how do you think of yourself now as a great guitar player? Meaning, you know, as a designer, knowing that if you played 100%, you could do this big grand thing, but instead you choose to just do the right 10% on everything. So I want to hear how you thought of design at the beginning of your life and how you think of it now.
Yeah, well, that's a big question, a good one as well. You're right. When you first start doing anything, you want to do everything at once.
Yeah.
You know, you want to just get it out there.
Yeah.
So how do I think of myself now? So I am amazed, frankly, that I've created this thing, this Soar brand. You know, I look at it sometimes and think, this is amazing. I've done it. This stage of my life and coming out of these like really significant failures, to do that is fantastic. And I'm amazed that we've produced products which are significantly better than anything else on the market.
Yeah.
That's like, well, God, surely this is a multi-billion pound industry. Surely there must have been other people who'd have thought about doing things this way, and they haven't. So that's very satisfying. You know, that's a really nice really nice feeling to have. It's, you know, like any business, you get caught up in the day-to-day running of the business, and it's often hard to step back. But I'm now my design language, so doing clothes, doing fashion design and doing sportswear, probably even more so sportswear, it's really hard. There's a lot of different moving parts.
Yeah.
You know, you understand fit, you have to understand fabric, you understand manufacturing. It's actually really hard. And so it's taken me a long time to really, really understand all of those different parts in great detail. And as you say, then be able to step back and go, this is enough. We don't need to do anything more. In fact, what we want to do is start taking away. So now the process is taking away. It's not putting things on, it's not layering on, it's taking, how can we make this the most minimal thing we possibly can? And so we have products which are just one piece of fabric, you know, a single piece of fabric with one join in it, because that's the most appropriate way to develop a garment to do what it needs to do. And that is really, that then gives you very distinctive products where you have this very reductive, minimalist thing that's just perfect for what it needs to do.
The hardest thing in the world for a visual artist is to know when to put the pen down, to know when to put the paintbrush down. Because you have something that you think is great, and you're like, well, I'm talented. This looks good. That combination must mean if I do more to it, it's going to look better. And eventually, you know, there's a bell curve to that, and it just starts to look awful. But I think, you know, celebrate what you've done with Soar, and it feels like there's no such thing as an overnight success. You know that well right now. But to a lot of people in the world right now, they're perceiving Soar as like this, it's new to them. A lot of people in the American market who are, you know, most of my listeners here, it's new to them. But the reality is you're experiencing a lot of success. There's no such thing as an overnight success.
There really isn't. Everyone says it, and it's so true. Yeah, it really is.
You've been grinding for a long time, but I think what you've built is beautiful. I've never met anybody who's had anything but positive things to say about your company, about you, and then about the garments that they purchased from you and how they perform. So good job, and thanks for doing this with me today.
Well, thank you, Josh.
Yeah, of course.